to have our next guest on. The last time he was on, he just blew our mind about Rome and the Roman Empire, and he's back. He is a podcaster. He is the CEO of Command Your Brand. Please welcome back for the another time of hopefully many, many more, Jeremy Ryan Slate. How are you, buddy?
Hey, man, thanks for having me. I'm stoked to be hanging out.
Very excited to have you. For those who may not be familiar with your last appearance, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where our listeners can find you?
Yeah, so you can find me over at jeremyryanslate.com or commandyourbrand.com. And last time I was on, we talked about the Roman Empire's third century crisis and how a lot of that related to kind of the economic and uh, immigration problems we're having right now. So it was quite a blast. I actually heard you on Shane Cashman not too long ago after that. So I guess I made an impact enough for you to mention me.
100%, dude. And like when they were running Kamala, whatever, when they were running her, I'm like, this is exactly what Jeremy was talking about.
Mhm.
They're just gonna put this mannequin in. She's gonna. Who knows how much power president actually has? I mean, if we've had a powerful president, I'm not saying he's doing a good job, but Trump seems to be like a guy who likes the power, but I don't even know if has any power. But Harris would have zero. We would literally have a Kardashian in the White House, just going around and just doing photoshops, drinking wine, hanging out with rappers. That's what our president would have been. So I think about that all the time, dude.
An empire looks like, man. The person seeing is not the person actually in charge of things. The reference you had made is the last Roman emperor Romulus Augustus is a teenage boy, and he's basically in charge of this Roman general Odoacer, and he finally says, "Hey, you know what? No more Roman Empire, and you're going to retire." So it's kind of an interesting period to be in, looking at a powerless monarch or executive.
And you bring up immigration wars. I mean, I had Mel K text me the other day. She was like, she sent me the article. She has, a picture of the article where they're talking about how the Supreme Court is going to here relook at gay marriage. And you go, if you want maximum chaos, overturn gay marriage. It's like, and then the streets will burn in rainbows, right? And that's what I could totally see happening. Pressure from above, pressure from below, and so it's like, yeah, and it's so crazy because I mean, when you think about an empire in decline, you start going, okay, is it that they extended themselves too far? Is it just like over time it just starts to lose its magic and things start going back and forth? But like watching what's happening in this country, it's a purposeful demolition. That's what I
I
see
could
happening.
No, I could definitely see that. And I think if you look at it, there's a similar way that empires in decline operate. One of the biggest ways is this dramatic centralization of power. And since 1913 in our country, we've seen that, right? The executive, a lot of the powers come onto them, but they're not really the person running things. So you have kind of this weird centralization. And you have two problems that pop up a lot. We were talking about immigration in the UK before we started recording here. And if you look at what happens in late stage Rome and also in a lot of empires, the thing that happens is border control becomes an issue and currency becomes an issue. And Roman emperors in the late empire were able to control the empire because they had the bigger military, right? It wasn't because they were the best politician. It wasn't because they were the most qualified for the job. They had the biggest sword and the most men, and they would kill anybody that challenged them. So then the problem that you end up having is to get more soldiers, you need more people. And if you don't have enough people, what do? You import them. And that's one of the biggest issues that Rome starts to have is it becomes less Roman, more militarized, and then they won't pay the army more. So then the money isn't worth as much. And this is a very similar issue you see in a lot of empires in decline. Even looking at post World War One Germany, right? The Weimar Republic, the money was worth nothing, right? It's when a country or an empire loses currency power, it doesn't have to be from the exact same things that get you there, but without currency, you do not have a country. And that's why if you even look at a lot of the states in Europe right now, why is it functioning like it's functioning? Well, because they all have the same currency, right? I was there in I'm thinking like 4 years ago. I went to 5 different countries in Europe, and you go to some certain places and their economy doesn't support the value of money, so it's really really expensive to live there. Like, you go to Hungary, or you go to Bratislava, or some of these other places, and our currency doesn't go as far, so it becomes a real problem. And I think that's the symptom of a system falling apart.
So let me ask you. I mean, you kind of got into it here, but
Yeah.
when people go, "Oh, the empire's failing," I think there's a part of them that believes that the United States is no longer going to exist. And maybe that is possible. But when I look at like Italy, I look at Germany, I look at England, I still think they're an empire. I just think they're cloaking it, and they're really good at getting everyone else to blame everybody else. Um, but what does that look like to you? I mean, like, part of me is like, okay, let's say the empire falls, right? We know the empire is going to fall. Um, does that mean we're just not regulating the rest of the world? We're not stealing resources from other countries, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. Like, I'm not someone who, like, I love being American. I think being American is an amazing thing. I also don't think that means we should be robbing all these countries of their natural resources. So what does that look like to you?
Well, I think the problem with it is when you look at it, right? Um, the thing that a lot of us wouldn't like is the standard of living change. The standard of living change is going to be dramatic, right? And that comes down to the petrodollar, that our dollar is what oil is currently valued at. If that ever changes, you're going to see your prices doubling, tripling, quadrupling overnight. So you're not going to be able to cheaply get a lot of the things we like and enjoy. So that is one really big downside. Now, the thing I would like to see, but once again, this hurts our standard of living, is not to be the world's police force and not to be in all these endless wars and things like that. So I think the problem that you're going to see is the US could end up like a lot of post-Soviet republics, right? Where it's a bit tyrannical who's in charge and who's controlling us, and maybe we break down into smaller pieces. And because of that, we don't have the power on the world stage, but you're also going to see our standard of living change dramatically. And I think that's the thing that people don't consider, the direction we're heading, how our standard of living changes, because it is dramatically different here than it is in a lot of places in the world.
Wait up, wouldn't you say that us not policing the world would save us money and make our standard of living a little bit better in a way?
Yes and no, because here's the problem that would have to change, and this is one of the things I was excited about tariffs with, but it hasn't totally come to fruition, is we need more industry here. The problem we're suffering with right now is we have a totally service-based and consultant-based economy, right? Like the thing that we outsource right now are companies like Deloitte and consulting. We don't really, and banking. We don't really produce anything here. Now, some of the positives we did see from the tariffs were companies talking about bringing production back here to America. So the standard of living change wouldn't be so dramatic if we had more manufacturing here and more things that we actually produced here. But on a service-based economy like we currently are, even with the savings and not policing the world, we wouldn't be in very good shape because we don't actually make anything. And I think that's a real problem.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I agree. So, but I think the world looks radically different too if
I do.
America does fall. You bring up kind of like everybody talks about secession, Texas seceding, California seceding, and I'm against that because I think you start getting into the balkanization, and then you start having wars between these territories, and I think that leads to a lot of chaos. Um, yeah, I mean it's interesting, dude. It's just and it's so funny because it's so easily no, I shouldn't say it's easily fixable, but it's easy for us on this show and people who follow the show to understand what's going on, which is this fractional reserve banking system that is
Correct.
completely built on just fake money, bribing everybody with this monopoly money and just running the economy into the ground through these Federal Reserves. And it's
Mhm.
just if people could wake up to it, maybe we have a chance. But I just feel like people are so distracted, they're never going to be able to understand what's going on.
Well, and that's why you even look at a lot of the drugging that's happening and things like that. People care more if they can get their psych drugs and Ozempic than if they can actually handle what's happening. People aren't aware enough of what's happening in the world, and at the same time, I don't know how you guys are feeling, but I was pretty excited for a lot of the policies that Trump was talking about in the
Yeah,
first quarter of this year.
yeah.
And Sam, it's been enough to drive me out of politics. It's to me felt like an enormous letdown. A lot of the policies I was hoping, the JFK files were a nothing burger. We still don't have the Epstein files. A lot of the things where the endless wars are still going on. So it's more of the same, and that's the thing that really is a letdown to me.
Yeah, it's really crazy to me, dude. And it's like some straight up Anakin Skywalker to the dark side type of play. And here's the whole thing. I mean, if you go, Sam, what do you think? Trump's second administration's his second point. I would go. There's going to be a lot of Zionism in there. There's going to be a lot of pushing the pharmaceutical drugs. There's going to be a lot of him lining his pockets because a lot of this is what politicians do. But I mean, like the how hard he's gone in on like just Israel and all that stuff is
Mm-hmm.
just absolutely insanity. The Jeffrey Epstein stuff, because Whitney Webb was calling it years ago, and I go, oh man, I hope he's on it. Whitney Webb's like, he's on it. I'm like, oh, he's on it. And so like his hard push on this is just, I mean, pushback on this is going to, I think, going to destroy his legacy. It's going to
Well,
be
and that
one of multiple things.
Well, you mentioned Whitney Webb, and I haven't finished the second volume of her two volumes, but I'm halfway through the first volume of One Nation Under Blackmail. And this was I started reading this when the Epstein files were more in the news. And the thing that was surprising to me is the more you read about Trump's connections before being in office, the more concerned you are. Because I'll be honest, I was a bit unknowing to some of these things, but I didn't realize Roy Cohn, who had been his lawyer in the late 80s and 90s,
Yep.
was very mob connected, was working with the FBI, supposedly was going to the same parties with J. Edgar Hoover when Hoover was wearing a dress. And a lot of these guys, their blackmail operations were being run throughout the 50s through the 80s and 90s. So to me, the Roy Cohn connection, which I didn't know a ton about, is a little bit concerning. And yeah,
I mean, Roy Cohn goes all the way back to McCarthy.
correct.
And basically, everyone believes that Roy Cohn kind of got him to put on the big show that he did because they knew Marxism was coming out, and they wanted to make everyone go, oh, it's just a Red Scare again. A stupid guy, even though McCarthy was totally right about everything. I mean, he totally nailed it. This kind of like this secret shadow group of Marxists who are also weird capitalists. It's a weird thing. They're really socialists, right? They
Yes.
present themselves as capitalists, but they're really corporate socialists, and that is the country we live in right now. Pure pure corporate socialism at
Yes.
every level.
Yeah, and honestly, my concern is now that I don't think he's going to do anything. And the thing that shocks me the most, Sam, is when he's talking about, it's the next Democrat hoax or et cetera. It's To me, it's like, why did you care so much when you were running? You campaigned on it, you spoke about it, and now it's a big hoax. I don't understand. And I
I
think that's the thing I'm really concerned about is why? Why did we get here?
I think best case scenario is he knew about it and just didn't do anything about it. Like he wasn't on the island. He didn't really do anything. He just knew about it and didn't tell or act upon telling anybody on it, which is still really fucking bad.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, I
even
think that's
Virginia
very hopeful.
Giuffre had worked at Mar-a-Lago, and that was
Yeah.
where Epstein had actually ended up hiring her from. So you have to figure
He knew
with that he
something.
knows
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Dude, that's just hopeful. That's just you being hopeful.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Like,
saying. That's best case
it's
scenario.
like that's like what you tell your girlfriend. You're like, oh, yeah, we were at a strip bar, but I just was eating the buffet. I didn't have any. I don't know where this glitter came from.
It's not mine.
That's what you're just hoping for, XG. I mean, it's like the letters he says they're not real. Maybe they aren't real. I mean, that's the whole thing right now. It's like we are in psyop season, and psyop season takes no days off.
But that's something as old as time, right? Like it really is. The ability to control the minds of others, control the thoughts of others. The first Roman emperor convinced people he was God, right? So it's like people have been doing these things for a very, very long time. And if you look at it, the tools people use, maybe the technology changes, but the techniques don't change. And I think that's the thing to consider.
All right. So, this is kind of what you want to get into. This is a great segue into it. So, where do you want to start?
Well, I think when people
By the way, I
understand,
just got to say you got great hair.
oh, thank you, man. It's
That
you
shit
can't
is
see
fire.
you can't see the back. It is not doing so hot back
That's
there. But
fine.
the
All
front,
we
we're
care
doing
about is
okay,
the
man.
front.
But when we talked a little bit last time when I was on the show that Rome's three periods in time, right? It's a kingdom first, then a republic, and then an empire. And the period people talk about the most is the empire, which is the kind of later stage of it, and that's the last 300 years of Rome. But if you look at Augustus, he's the first Roman emperor, and he's the adopted son of Julius Caesar. So he's a very interesting individual. I don't know how much you guys know about the last 100 years of the Roman Republic, but it's a
Whatever you
really
told us last time, that's what we
it's a
know.
it's a pretty tough time. It's called the Roman Civil War, and during that period of time, there's constant strongmen basically using political position and military power to put themselves in charge. So for 100 and X years, it's chaos. So when Caesar's assassinated in 44 BC, the thing that's most shocking to people is when his will is read, he names his great nephew, Augustus, who at this point in time is known as Gaius Octavius, his successor. And everybody's kind of like, that guy, he's 18 years old. He doesn't have any political power. He doesn't have any military power. Why this 18-year-old kid? Now, there's some other things we could get into because Caesar did have a reputation for the possibility of some man boy love, but we can't really prove that with Augustus.
Oh, Lord.
In his youth, there was a Greek king that they used to call Caesar his wife, and that's why the thing people the quip people would say about Caesar is he was a wife to every man and a husband to every woman because he was also known as a womanizer. But anyway,
so he's basically Andy Dick.
pretty much. So he names this 18-year-old kid his successor, right? At this point in time, there is no emperor yet. There is no king yet. Historically, Rome hates the idea of kings, and they actually kill their last king, a guy named Tarquin the Proud. So when Augustus takes power, he's observed a lot of things, and he's actually become very shrewd through a lot of this observation. So the two guys that are known for killing Caesar are these guys named Brutus and Cassius, and along with Augustus, at this point known as Octavian, unites with a guy named Mark Antony that we all know pretty well for his love affair with Cleopatra, etc. So the two of them chase down Cassius and Brutus and have them killed to basically avenge Caesar. And then they start this process. It's called a proscription. And what this means is they all got to make lists of all the guys they didn't like, and they killed all of them. There's thousands of people that are killed as part of these proscriptions. So then Augustus, being the smart guy he is, realizes if he wants full power, well, he can't be splitting it with Mark Antony. And during this period of time, Antony is actually living in Egypt and partying it up with Cleopatra. So Augustus starts a smear campaign to basically say that he's become Mark Antony is becoming effeminate and he's becoming Eastern and he's not really Roman. And because of that, he's able to push him out of political power and ends up the Battle of Actium in 31 BC. He uses a Roman army to basically end Antony's army. And then we have Antony and Cleopatra commit suicide is what we kind of historically know about it. So he very well sets himself up. So then what he does in the year 27 BC is he does the ultimate mind trick. You have to think these people have been through civil war for 100 years. The civil war starts in 133 BC. So in 27 BC, he says, all right, guys, I've solved the problem. I'm going to lay down my power and I'm going to go like farm or something like that. So how do you think people would react that have been in civil war for 100 years? They freak out. They're like, no, you can't leave us. You cannot leave us. So they end up giving him this title of Augustus. And Augustus means majestic or revered. And he takes this other title, the I guess, Speaker of the House, the person that controls the Roman Senate, is this guy named the Princeps Senatus. So he gives himself this title of Princeps. That's where we get the word prince from. So he uses kind of this word salad of different titles to have all of these powers without really calling himself king. And obviously, there's a lot more things that we can discuss that he does, but he's brilliant in terms of being a tactician to convince people, number one, to demand he take power. And there's a whole other um, list of things that he does to convince people he's God.
I mean, listen, I know there's a lot of people who love Trump on here, and again, I would take Trump over most of all these scumbags, mostly because I just like the shit talking he does. I take that over just progressive lies to me, right? But that seems a lot of stuff he's doing right now. It's like, maybe I should run for another 4 years and all that stuff, and dictator Trump and all that we seem to have going on right now. This kind of turning him into this kind of mythological creature that is here to save us while simultaneously like driving us off a cliff.
Well, that's the problem though, because it goes back to when you look at what Augustus does, he knows where people are at, right? And love Trump or hate Trump, he knows where people are at right now, right? They don't want to lose him. And Augustus knew that people had been through civil war for 100 years. They didn't want to lose him. So he was in a very good position to take over. And also the political system by this point had broken down so much that it was very easy to do what he did, right? And that's why the power of words, not using a word king, using a word like princeps, where we get the word prince from. These are things that allow you to take those powers and take the powers you want, but not use words that are going to make people not want that. So another thing that he does as well is there's many different political offices in Rome, and we don't have to go into all of those, but there's a few that are really important. There's the tribune, and tribunes had powers like proposing laws. Their body was what's called sacrosanct, meaning if you tried to hurt them, you would face the death penalty. They had the ability to veto laws and also force the Senate to meet. So he takes that power. So now he's princeps and he's tribune. He also grabs another power called the censor. And censors are interesting because that's where we get our word census from, because they're responsible for counting people, but they're also responsible for the moral standards of the country. So they would decide what's moral and we're allowed to do it, and what's not moral and we're allowed to do it. And they could actually remove people from the Senate. So he takes that power. And he also takes the power of the chief priest of Rome as well. So he's also totally in control of religion. And that's something he's going to actually use to deify himself, right? Because if you're now somebody that becomes godlike, you can't really challenge somebody that becomes godlike. So it's interesting when you look at the position of emperor, because he builds this position that over the next 500 years will become the thing it is, right? And I think that's what's really interesting.
Well, I'm currently still reading. I got a little off track, but I'm reading about Alexander II, and his father Nicholas was basically the Pope of the Russian Orthodox Church. So then he kind of has this somewhat godlike energy to him, as the way the Russian people look at them. The Tsar is basically, right under God or God. So you see that a lot. And there is, I think Russia kind of painted themselves as the extension of the Roman Empire.
Well, a lot of countries and a lot of empires did that in a lot of ways, because the Russian word czar, a lot of the different words come from the name Caesar, right? And that's what you have to really look at. The German Kaiser, which they use for king, comes from Caesar. So it is a lot of countries were patterning on that. And I think an important point you made there, Sam, is there's a very fine line between love and worship. It's a very fine line. And I think that's been part of the scary thing about some Trump rallies, and also the positive thing about it, right? Like it's such a razor's edge. And I think when you look at that, going back to the world Augustus lived in, he lived in a world where things were seen differently, but in some ways they weren't, right? Because if you look at how people look at celebrities or how they look at social media influencers, to some people, regular people that live in a trailer in the middle of America, they're deified in a lot of ways because they can never reach those people. There's distance between them and those people. So they're deified in a way. this was deification, or the process of becoming a god, is a tool that powerful individuals have used for a long time to build their own power. And at the time when Augustus lived, um, the Greeks had seen God and men really as walking on the same ground all the time. So if you look at the first worship of Augustus, it starts in a city called Pergamum, which is in Greece. And Alexander the Great had managed in the when by the time he dies in 323 BC to create an entire worship cult around him through this entire Greek empire. And a lot of Eastern influence comes in to really supplement this as well. So the worship cults to Augustus's divinity start in Greece first, because they would have been more accepting of seeing someone as a god. And then by the time they come into the empire, it's not going to be till his death. But the things that he does during life is in 43 BC, when they're celebrating the funeral games for Julius Caesar, there's a comet that goes across the sky, and he'll be like, and he says that comet is my deified father going to heaven. Well, Julius Caesar, God, does that make, right? So he's saying thing without saying, and I think that's a really important thing. And also, there's this work called the Gestae Divi Augusti, or the in modern language we call it the works of the divine Augustus. For him, the title would have meant the things that I did. And it was originally written in Rome, but the temple that it was written in was lost. It was later found in Ankara, Turkey, and it describes all of the accomplishments in his life. So one of the things he starts doing is controlling the press, and controlling the media, and controlling what are people reading.
This sounds like Kim Jong-un.
But as I said, it's a playbook that powerful people have used for many, many, many years, right? So he does that. He also starts using the power of the government to be funding writers. So he's going to fund Virgil's Aeneid. He's going to fund writers like Horace. There is
Whoa, that's crazy.
There's a writer called Ovid, and Ovid was famous for writing what's called erotic poetry. It's some wild stuff if you ever get to read it. He had a girlfriend named Lesbia, and he's actually removed from Rome, and he lives the rest of his life outside of Rome by Augustus, because moral reform and controlling the message is really important. So Ovid wasn't on point, so he gets kicked out. He also starts creating new marriage laws and laws about how you raise children and laws around the family. So he's realizing he's establishing basically a new Roman lore, and he's establishing things around himself. He creates face on every little coin, statues across the entire empire. So someone that understands propaganda, you could, as you mentioned, Kim Jong-un, you could see these tools everywhere. People use them throughout the centuries.
Yeah, I mean, and then you get into kind of like, where do we see that in America? And I think it's Operation Long Leash.
What's that?
I I think that's in the 60s, where they completely, fund the counterculture. They funded, you
Oh,
got
out of like
Operation,
California and everything?
like all those like kind of like artsy fartsy 60s, like Warhol and all those guys, they were all funded by the CIA. And then this is exactly like Operation Mockingbird, where you're basically funding everything. Now, here's a very interesting thing that's happening right now. And I don't know how we get to Rome to Howard Stern, but here we are. Howard Stern, suddenly now his head's on the chopping block. We just saw Stephen Colbert gone, and we're seeing other these kind of what has become, which is crazy when you talk to Stern, a progressive brand. I mean,
Sure.
the guy was allowed to do whatever he wanted, like with impunity. Like, oh, he got fined, yeah, okay, but he just kept going. Why Opie and Anthony get ran out of radio?
Yeah.
But now we see the end of USAID, USAID, and then suddenly like, yeah, we don't think we're gonna keep Stern anymore. You're like, well, because you probably can't afford him. Nobody, does anybody here have Sirius Radio? I know there's only 4 of us. I'm the only one that I know that has Sirius Radio.
I used to have Sirius Radio when Opie and Anthony first got on the XM virus, but
Well,
I haven't listened in years.
I moved over to Sirius in '06 or whatever it was for Stern. I was one of those guys. I got it to listen to Stern every day. It was the greatest thing. And then, I mean, God, after Artie left, he changed. After I actually, before I came here to LA, Sam, there was this turning point on the Stern show, and I applied for a job in the office there. Um, just trying to get out of journalism, and I interviewed with this woman called Marcy Turk, and she came over to Stern's organization from this kind of organization cult that he got
Whoa,
brainwashed
you
by.
talked to his cult leader?
Well, it's I can't remember the name of it, but it's all about staying like task oriented, and they describe it as kind of cultish. It's kind of it's all consuming. It consumes your life, and he was
Yeah.
all about it. It like organized his thoughts, and he brought the one of the top people over, this woman Marcy. And I remember the interview was very strange. Because it was clear that what they wanted to make the show was not what was good about Stern. She was asking me questions about like, do you think there should be more celebrity interviews? And I was like, not really,
Yeah, whatever you want me to say to get the job. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
but that was clear that the correct answer was we wanted more celebrities on the show. And that's what it was all. I could tell from that interview, like they were going the complete wrong way. And from that time on, the show was just all it was like softball interviews for celebrities. He never went hard on anybody anymore.
Well, like
Yeah,
they
it
used
just
to
became a
say
different
this
show.
about George Carlin, like, oh, he lost his edge. I'm like, he's 75. He's
Carlin
not meant.
didn't. Whoever said that didn't listen to his last
I remember
couple
people
specials.
saying, dude, he's 75. He's not supposed to be leading the charge of art. There should be other people picking it up and going farther than he is. So they just do it. The problem is, and Stern is your typical new progressive, old school liberal becoming progressive who just shuts the door on the people behind him trying to do along the lines of what he are in the same vein. It's like Mark Maron's on a tear right now going after everybody. And they were talking about how like Rogan had to take down an episode that Mark Maron was on because he dropped the N bomb. And now he's like, this podcasting's out of control, and we're they're going after these demographics that can't really defend them, whatever
Can
he's
you
doing.
explain that Maron dropped it or Rogan did?
Maron
Maron
dropped
didn't
it.
like Maron did. Okay.
Maron did.
But is it that or just kind of knowing where their bread is buttered? You know what I mean? Like they know, like, if you look at Howard jumping to Sirius for bigger money, you look at Colbert was making an obnoxious amount of money to host a nightly show. So like, I guess the question is, they have certain people or organizations that are telling them what to say.
No,
Is
I
it
agree
more
with
of just
that.
knowing where their bread is buttered?
I think you're totally on point with that, what you're saying, but I just seen it happen where like maybe their bread and butter, they are totally where their bread is buttered, but I also think like there's something about when you get to the highest levels of entertainment, you just are surrounded by these kind of rich kid, super progressive trust fund kids, and you just start to drink the Kool-Aid and you start thinking like that, and you just start shutting doors behind you. And I just find it just absolutely ridiculous. And it's such a bad look when you made your bones talking and acting certain ways, and then suddenly you turn around and now you're like, oh, well, people's feelings, and we shouldn't be hurting people's feelings. Or as Adam Carolla would call it, chick think, right? We start worrying about, well, oh, that person's feelings might be her. And it's just like, dude, you were like, there's a clip going around right now where Howard Stern is absolutely getting murdered because he has this hot chick on and she takes out the bag, and all these ugly motherfuckers in the studio are like, you're so ugly. You're like, you would be lucky to drink that chick's bathwater.
It was the
fucking
Butterface competition,
Yeah.
right? That was what they were doing.
And she was really hot. I mean, today she would have an Instagram. Like, Johnny, that's a pretty attractive chick.
Sam, some of the things
they have her made up, like no makeup on. I mean, it's meant to make her look at her worst. But she's fine. I mean, she's fine.
some of the quote tweets you post on X, Sam, with the words "would," kind of worry me sometimes, man.
Join the Wood Army,
Thank
dude. Join
you.
the Wood Army.
Hey, that show wouldn't fly today, though. There's no way they'd have a Butterface show.
Well,
I totally disagree.
It wouldn't be on Sirius, obviously, but
I mean, that's just
it's on YouTube or
basically.
something.
I'm not
There's
saying
not
they're
many things that
doing
would
Stern,
fly
but-
anymore. Tropic Thunder is one of my favorite movies of all times, and they couldn't make it now.
Yeah.
Oh, they could make
Hollywood
it,
couldn't,
and they could totally, yeah. But movies are going to go the way of everything else completely. independent. But you can make, I mean, like that's kind of what the Legion of Skanks do, right? Like they do that kind of in the vein. I'm not saying they're doing Stern, but I'm saying they're in that vein where they kind of go for it, and they're getting a lot of love for it, as they so deserve. I'm waiting for my episode to drop. I'm waiting to see how people react to me doing Story Wars. But back to Augustus. Yeah, man, it just seems like they just keep playing the same playbook over and over again, you know.
Well, it's similar. It's similar tools, right? As I mentioned, language is really important. So you have to watch how people use the words they use, right? Like, what are they trying to convince you of with their language? And at the same time, how do people create praise, right? Like if you even look at, you know, I don't know if it's like monetization on X and some other things, you can make a lot of dissenters quiet by paying you, right? And I think that's very similar to, you know, the way people would look at what an emperor could do for them. So I think you have to really be astute and observe for these things because they do happen. They are still happening. And I guess you have to question the culture we currently live in, right? It's interesting as well. And this goes back to the Howard Stern point is looking at where we are now, have those people lost the culture? And I guess, how do we define our culture now, right? Because there is still this really hard push to control it. But I think we do see the cracks and the breaks in it from things like podcasting and from things like the ability to have these streaming shows. And I don't know about you guys, but you can also say a lot more things on YouTube than you used to be able to. So I do think there's things changing, but
A
there
bit
are
of
some.
winning going on that, you know, like the notion of canceling somebody is somewhat dead. Canceling
Correct.
is canceled. And they if a company does that, they face big backlashes. And you know, so we have the UFC going to Paramount, and everyone blamed, you know, Trump for getting Stephen Colbert fired. But I'm wondering if this huge $7.7 billion, you know, deal that they're doing with the UFC has something to do with trying to get rid of the super progressives off of CBS, because CBS always played to middle America. That's why they always had the best numbers. They weren't like NBC or even ABC that was
Uh,
playing to New York and to, maybe I'm wrong on ABC,
well, not
but
with Letterman though. Letterman was kind of seen as the alt guy, and Leno was the guy who played to middle of the road, right? With
yeah,
the
but
late
if you
night.
kind of go like over, yeah, like 20 years ago,
Yeah,
maybe NBC was a little more, but you know, once there's like, you know, I
yeah, I see
remember
what you're saying.
when, and I've talked about this before on the show, but when like Parks and Recs came in, and The Office, that we now kind of see as these cult classics, but really those shows weren't doing well. Maybe The Office was, and anybody
No, it
can say,
wasn't. The Office almost. I remember campaigning for The Office not to get canceled. During season 3, they were like, "People, you got to get behind the show, or it's gonna get canceled."
I've gotten into huge arguments with people. I'm like, those shows were so bad, or the ratings were so bad that NBC was ranked fifth out of four networks, because like Telemundo or whatever one of them had jumped NBC into the fourth spot, because those comedies were rated so poorly. I mean, like nobody was watching them because it was, again, this beginning of like nerd comedy, like what Hollywood goes through. You know, I've been through, so started with nerd comedy, then it got into female comedy, now it's in diversity comedy. Now it's kind of just figuring it out because it won't admit it's just going to do like popular podcasts which have a lot of white guys in it. But that was the beginning of like the kind of craze. And then CBS was always doing Mike and Molly, you know, those kind of like, you know, super fat white couple that middle America could totally relate to. And they're getting huge numbers. And those when you're playing in New York and LA, and that's not middle America. And they lost a giant portion of the population when that happened. But
Well, I
so
think
yeah,
streaming is changing that big time because you even look at what Chappelle's been able to, a lot of others have been able to do, because streaming is driven by who's watching. They're not going to push it if people aren't watching the stream. So I think that's the one really interesting point about where we are in media now is things are being created for what people are actually watching. So
yes.
I think that's the really exciting part, because there's a few series that I've watched that I thought were pretty good and they don't make a second season of them, right? Because not enough people watch them. So I do think that a lot of these big companies are looking at it and they're looking at their pocketbook and they're saying, well, what am I losing money on? What am I making money on? And I think that's the reason you're seeing the culture swing so much is we've people really weren't willing to put up with this, but they also weren't watching a lot of this trash TV and a lot of these trash shows.
We've talked about it 1,000 times. Apple Television is absolutely beautiful television. It's just so woke, and you don't realize halfway through it, and you're like, oh, is every character got to be non-binary? I mean, every one of them. I mean, like this Silo show, you just got waif model non-binary chicks beating the shit out of everybody. And it's like crazy, but the show's really good. The writing's great. It's glistens. It's beautiful. But it's gonna be interesting to see how long Apple TV can keep putting out this super woke stuff. I think the difference between then and maybe before Trump got elected for a second time is that they don't brag about how woke it is. Like usually they would brag, oh my God, look at this diverse cast. It's so diverse. They don't do that anymore. They just kind of put out the show. They give you the storyline of the show, and they don't tell you that you're going to see a bunch of non-binaries. Apple TV loves the non-binaries. It's like almost like they have to pay them less. That's why there's so many on the TV show. But yeah, I mean, it's like we're definitely in a culture war for sure. I mean, it's very.
Well, do you think it's breaking though? Do you think that because I think when we look at it, we talk about a lot of these control mechanisms. We talk about how things are changing. I think the last election was a big deal, but we talked about early on. We've kind of been let down in a lot of ways. But do you think this is a transition in culture and like because you look at the 80s for entertainment, man, the 80s was incredible. And the early 90s were pretty good. And as we went into the 2000s, we started to kind of go downhill.
Yeah,
Do you think we're in a changing period?
Clinton deregulates. Go on, sorry.
No, I was gonna say, do you think we're kind of going into that next era in media that's more controlled by people?
So I think about this a lot. I talk to myself a lot, and some of the stuff I talk to myself about is how are they going to be able to control and push the people out that they want out? And it all comes down to reach, right? But they can only do that for so long. You remember that one chick, Bobby, whatever her name is, her podcast came out, the mom with the big tits, and like with it, like it's just such a great example of like how some people can't handle fame. So she gets a little fame. She gets Drake on first episode. I think she bangs him first episode, just bangs Drake. And like within a month, she's abandoned her family, her children, and now she's just chasing rapper dick and pro athlete dick. And now her show she just ended it because people stopped watching it because I think that there was some segment that locked. She was a mom. They wanted to watch it. This mom talking to all these really quote unquote cool celebrities, and then she banned her family. And no one wanted to listen to her. So they're gonna push people out, and as we're seeing right now with people who get super Zionist, once they go there, their brand starts to die, and then they'll throw them under the bus or to the side of the road, and they'll keep throwing someone else out. So it will go down the reach who they're allowed to see and who they're not allowed to see. Like, anytime someone says, "Dude, you were on my front page of YouTube," I'm like, somebody messed up at YouTube. How did they let that happen? But it's a blessing, and that's how they're going to control it.
It's interesting though too because I think if you look at and this kind of pulls us back to Rome a little bit, but if you look at a lot of the worship cults that they had in Rome were kind of wild, but in some ways you look at it like one that's interesting to me is this one called the Cult of Elgabel. There was this conical black rock, there's a word that we don't hear very much, black rock. And it was basically they would worship this rock and do a lot of weird things for that. And I think that's what you see with a lot of these large organizations in our culture, right? You see organizations like BlackRock controlling what we think and controlling what we do. But I think at the same time, they've realized we've caught on to the code words now. We've caught on to things like DEI. We've caught on to things like ESG. So I do think right now we're in a period where they're getting ready to roll out their next round of code words, right? Because we've caught on to all the old ones. And it's like that game where there's the three cups on the table and they're moving the ball around, right? So we're in that point now where we have to look for what are the next words.
Well, bringing up Rome is we just live in bread and circus right now. I mean, we are just living in bread and circus, whether it's sports, whether it's entertainment, just anything, like Instagram is just, I mean, I'm a grown ass man, And I'm just like, does it have to be all tits and ass 24/7? Like Instagram has got me almost to be like, oh, okay, tits and ass, yay. I mean, I do a joke now about how like I hosted this bikini contest. And this chick showed her monkey to everybody, and the place went nuts. And I go, this was in '99 when seeing a girl's like private parts meant something. It was like a spiritual moment. Now it's just like everywhere. Like pussy's like the dollar. It's just they printed too much, and it's just not worth what it used to be. And it's just like kind of what it is now. But again, if you get into what I've studied the algorithm and what they push four things. They push dumb, sex, violence, and are you going to piss people off?
Yeah.
Those four things, that's all bread and circus right there.
But that goes back to
Distraction,
cultural
distraction.
decline. That goes back to cultural decline, like we were talking about earlier, right? If you look at kind of where an empire is when it's not really healthy, it's over militarizing, it's destroying its money, right? Like you look at the banking system and what it's doing to things. And at the same time, and that's not to say we need to be like, I don't know, Puritans or something like that, but you kind of look
Right.
at what's happening to kind of the moral system of society, and it gets destroyed. You know, going back to that cult of Elagabal, it came into Rome from this teenage emperor named Elagabalus, and he's a very interesting guy. Before he arrives in Rome, he sends a picture of himself to the Senate dancing around the rock to kind of show everybody what they can expect when he gets there. He's carried around by a chariot pulled by prostitutes. He marries a Vestal virgin. He makes his hairdresser in charge of the grain supply, and he would basically advance men in their position by how long their dong was. You know, the longest dong got the best job.
What? Say
What?
this again,
So-
dude. Say this
So
again. Start this over.
Elagabalus, this teenage emperor, would advance men in their position by the length of their member. It wasn't by how qualified they were; it was how big their bait and tackle were. And
I would
one of
never get promoted. I would never get promoted. I
so
would just,
the
and
reason
he's measuring, like he personally needs to measure it.
apparently so that was how it was done, and the reason that he's actually killed by the Praetorian Guard, he only rules for about 2 years, but the reason he's killed by the Praetorian Guard is orgies had become too prevalent in Rome, and the Senate was not so happy. So you look at kind of the morality of where, and this is in the middle of the 3rd century. They'd only last another 150 years. So it really is towards the end of an empire where we're at. And I look at where we're at now. We're able to burn through money a lot faster because of the technology we have. You know, imagine if Romans had computers, how quickly they would have destroyed their money. And that's what we've been able to do.
dude, that is so crazy. Your boss like, whip it out. Do you want promotion? Whip it out.
Don't give us Sam any ideas.
No, dude. I would never get promoted, man. I would be
No.
I'm still in the office, still in the mailroom. I'm taking boner pills. Come on, man. Get an Asian in here so I can get promoted.
But
Hey, dude,
Go ahead.
I mean, are you promoting the best guys or are you just promoting the big dick dudes?
Well,
Because
at
I've
that
seen
point in
some
time-
homeless guys with fucking hammers on them. And like if you're being protected by a bunch of big dick dudes who are dumb, you're gonna get assassinated.
I would see that happening, yeah. But if you kind of look at culture and how it is on the decline, and that's the interesting thing about Rome is by the time Rome falls, it's a bunch of religious zealots, which is kind of interesting. But they did so much damage during the time period of, you know, the 3rd century and onward, that you do have a lot of this really strangeness happening. And I think that's what you look at in our society now. And once again, it's not to say we have to be puritanical, and it's not to say that, you know, sex isn't a permitted thing, but it's to say how it's used is an indicator of where you're at.
No, you're right. Like that Bonnie Blue shit. Someone fucking 100 dudes in one day. Like it's too crazy. Like
What's
like
the point of that? I don't understand.
I'm telling you, dude, it's a humiliation ritual. That's
I don't
what it's
get
all
it.
about. It's women have no clue. Women have no like obviously the women who listen to the show are brilliant people and they know and they're so smart and we're so blessed that they listen to the show. I'm talking about the women who don't listen to the show. Okay. There's a lot of power that comes with pussy. And if you don't have your head on straight, you can get very much into the instant gratification and the understanding, the not understanding that You know, when these porn stars are like, I'm the filthiest bitch on the internet. I'm the filthiest chick out there. Like that's admitting to humiliation. It's a humiliation ritual. You know, that's why when these girls retire, they want all their videos off the internet. That's why when they somehow get married and have kids, they don't want anyone knowing about all the stuff they did. They just don't understand that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it's all about. It's about convincing women. Like OnlyFans is a giant psyop.
Yeah.
Like this one guy said the other day, that chick who had one guy gave her $40 million and she still hasn't met him. Yeah, because he's a CIA spook using you to promote this lifestyle. Like, look at you. Look at you, man. You could be like her. You could be making $40 million an hour dragging dildos up your beehole. You know what I'm saying? Like that's like kind of that's what the promotion is. But most of them, like the numbers are like most of them make $200 a month if they're lucky.
Well, even that, it's like in some ways gender roles have changed a lot, which is kind of weird.
100%.
Which is kind of weird. Like it used to be wrong to promote things like that, and if you look at it now, the statistics show that a lot of guys aren't getting married, a lot of guys aren't having sex. You're kind of seeing the gender roles change dramatically, where now something that would have been, 20 years ago, you would have been, she's a slut or this or that. Like those things are promoted and it's called empowerment. And to me, it's degrading.
Yes, you're so right. And they just, okay, Xavier, what do you want to say? Defend the sluts.
No, I wasn't gonna defend the slut. I was actually gonna be on kind of your side on how like now men are saying don't sleep around. Like Andrew Tate's telling you like don't really sleep around. He's like pick a.
Yeah, but he's doing it. So what are you gonna do?
Yeah. But
they
what I'm
they
saying,
want women to be promiscuous whores and for men to be monogamous Puritans. That's what they want.
Yeah.
But you know what's interesting about that, Sam? You know what's interesting about that is a society like that, and this goes back to how late stage societies are. A society like that doesn't procreate, right? So a society like that does not continue, and it doesn't continue to produce itself.
Yeah, let's just take a look at the populations that have very educated females. And I have two daughters. I am never going to sit there and say I have daughters. I'm not going to sit there and say women shouldn't be educated. That's not the point of this. The point
I have
is
three of them. I would agree with you.
It's what is being what are they learning in their education that is going into programming. What are they being programmed that makes them think they shouldn't have children? Which, back in the day, that's all women wanted were children. They dreamed of having children. They dreamed of being a mom. I brought my kids back home last week. I mean, the aunts and the grandmas and the cousins just doting over the children. Like that's a primal drive in females. So we look at the West, we look at the East, not the Middle East, but the East. They have very highly educated females, and they're not having children. What is going on with that? Why are they?
You look at a lot of like a lot of Muslim countries, and a lot of them, their birth rates are really high, right?
Yes.
If you look at a lot of like America and a lot of European countries, the birth rates are going down, right? And that is why immigration problems like we were talking about in the UK earlier are happening, because just the birth rates are just higher.
Yeah, I mean, but that goes again into, we've had debates on the show about the West versus, Islamic ideologies, and which is more healthier for women. And, it's a real debate, and obviously the females of Islam want to have children. They want to have tons of children. The women of the West don't want to have children because nobody ever sits there and goes, this amazing life that you're living as a 20-year-old woman isn't going to go on forever. And it doesn't mean you're not beautiful. It doesn't mean you don't have value. It just means like this is the cycle of life.
Not sure, to be fair, not sure the Islamic women have much choice in the matter, but just to put that out there.
Here we go.
I don't disagree with you, Johnny.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. It's okay. It's okay. I get it, you guys. I totally get it. No, nobody wants to look at data. Nobody wants to look at any of that stuff. That's
but
fine.
I mean, the birth rate can be high and it still not be a good time for the people having the births.
Okay, but the low birth rate is detrimental to your country.
No, I would agree with that. I think that's the bigger. That's the bigger
Drink
point.
Drink your hand sanitizer bottle that you have right there. Okay?
That's the bigger point, though. Is you're seeing a lot of Western countries not live in replacement. And this goes back to kind of later stage Rome. Later stage Rome, they weren't having as many children. The children they were having weren't living as long, right? And then you're having a lot of tribes on the borders were having children. They were growing, and that's why if you look at something like the immigration issues that we're having here in America, it is, it's not the same thing, but it's a similar process to what happens. That's why I like to say, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes in a lot of ways. You can look for patterns and you can look for similar things that happen.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, the more things change, the more they seem the same, right? And it's just, I don't know what the future is in this country. I don't know. It's just, yeah. I mean, we're basically Rome at this point. It's like so crazy to me. It's just crazy. Just everything. And you just like, you go, why is this happening? Can we stop it to happen? You're like, well, I'm sure Rome was kind of like, why is this happening? Can we stop it happening? And it just, big wheels keep on turning.
Well, then you look at the power structure changes, right? Because the thing that happens then as, it changes from a Roman Empire to a barbarian empire is that same empire morphs into a lot of the power structure of what the Catholic Church becomes, right? So it's the thing you look at is empires don't really change or don't really fall, they morph, right? They change and they become something else. So I guess the question you would have to ask is, what does this Western empire become? Like, where is it going? And I think that's the bigger question.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think?
I think that's a tough question to answer because you see, the rising power that is China, but you also see our government wants to prop up the rising power that is Russia, right? So it's like at the same time, who's the real enemy? And I think that's the harder point to know. Is do we even have an enemy, right? Like, are we just made to be afraid of that? That's kind of the indecision where we're at.
Like, could we even stop it if we wanted to? I mean, are we so divided right now that people are just locked into their ideology? They're just hunkered down. Could you get anybody to change their? I mean, you see people a little here and there pop. Suddenly they wake up, but it just seems like people are just set. I mean, they through algorithms and these news channels, like you're only getting confirmation bias all the time.
Well, that, and then it could, think of how weird it is to be around people you haven't seen in a while, and that's the weird part about social media is you get to see people and everything that's been happening in their lives. So now you don't have anything to talk about, and people are just sitting and watching their reels when they're hanging out together. So it's like we have kind of lost a lot of what makes us human, and it's about finding what gets back to making us human. It's really a weird place to be.
Well, you're so right. I never thought about it like that. I thought about it more like the school reunion because we don't have school reunions anymore. Because what's the point? I know exactly what you've been doing because I see you on Instagram. But that's the same thing. That's the same thing with family now. Even when I go hang out with my sister, I don't really talk to her because I know her. I know the kid graduated. I know he can read because it's all on Instagram. So even when I'm there, I'm still like, instead of asking her, "Hey, how'd your kid go?" Because I just saw it on Instagram, so it's just repeating. Yeah, wow.
We're so social that we're so social that we're unsocial, right? And I think that's the thing to consider about where we're at. And here's the interesting point: people that aren't social, they don't congregate, they don't do things together, they don't operate in groups.
100%.
They're very easy for bankers and multinational corporations to control, right? Because they're not going to unite, they're not going to work together because they're too happy sitting in their pod and eating the bugs.
And it's only going to get worse. I don't see any
Amazon. I mean, like
improvement.
Sorry to cut you off, Johnny.
No, I just don't see any improvement. Do you see improvement? Like, I don't see. I mean, the technology that is on the horizon is not technology that physically brings people together in common spaces more. It's gonna isolate people more than anything.
Well, I know, like in the podcasting and marketing world that I kind of live in, most of the big events don't happen anymore, right? Social media marketing world that used to happen in San Diego every single year, and it was one of the biggest events that happened in our industry. This was the last year they ran it. A lot of big events aren't happening because people aren't going to events anymore. They'd rather sit on Zoom and eat their Cheetos, right? So it's like we are being pushed apart by being pushed together, and that's the really strange part about it.
Yeah, I mean, like, dude, malls are dying. Could you imagine, like, if you went to the 90s and you told everybody high school kids aren't going to go to the mall. The mall isn't going to be full of high school kids, boys chasing girls around at the mall. The mall would be dead. It would be a great place to go power walk because there's nobody there.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy to me. Like, I love the mall, even, and we had tiny malls where I was from. But whenever my mom would bring us up to the mall, I would just walk around and just stare at all the goth chicks at Hot Topic, dude. I would fucking love that. Right? And they don't do that anymore. And like we've even talked about it like with all the other comedians. There's so much stand up on the internet now that people almost feel like they don't have to go see it live, even though it's just 10 times better, right?
Yeah.
Wait, think about boredom. Think about how much creativity and skill, like learning skills that used to be inspired just by boredom. Do you remember? When's the last time you were fucking bored, bro? Do you know what I mean? Kids are never bored now. I was just watching a documentary about Noel Gallagher, how he learned to play guitar, and he was just like bored out of his mind. His dad had a guitar. His dad couldn't even play guitar. And so he just picked it up and learned to play to the radio, like over hours and days and weeks, just taught himself to play because he was fucking bored, man.
Yeah.
Like
No.
kids, zero children today, 0.0% of kids will ever have that chance
No,
to just discover something like that.
even now, Johnny, I want to go get my tags at the DMV, and I remember actually looking at the clock because I was so bored. You know how you're a kid, you keep
Yeah,
looking
and
at
it
the
never
clock.
happens again.
That will
Yeah.
never happen again. You will just
No.
be on your phone. You'll be bored. I mean, it's bored because you
Crazy.
just don't want to be at the DMV, but you don't
Yeah.
know what boredom is.
Well, I think as well, that's what the danger is, in cities as well, right? Because if you look at that, there's manual labor and the ability to actually do something. It's not a huge area I live on, but I live on like 5 acres with a bunch of chickens. I have pigs. I have a bunch of dogs. So it's like at the same time, there's always something for me to do, right? And I think a lot of people are losing their capabilities and not just losing their socialness. So I think at the same time, skills are important too, and we're losing
Yes.
those because we're filling that area with vegging on Netflix or sitting on the internet or doing whatever it is we might be doing, and we're not building skills and we're not seeing people.
And we have no idea what the effects of that are on a society
No, we
long
don't.
term. I mean, it's a total experiment being done on the entire population of the planet right now. On
It's
the
never
effects of
happened before.
The brain, yeah.
It's people have
That's scary.
individuated and they're not members of a group, right? If you think of the kind of the way religion has always operated, religion has always been a group thing. And I think after COVID, there's been a bit more of a revival to it. But for the most part, people are less religious, they're less spiritual because those used to be gathering places where, public speeches would be there, all sorts of things were there. If you look at the First Continental Congress, was held in a church, right? Like, so a lot of those gathering places were religious places. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons that we're losing those as well, because there's no reason to gather.
Yeah, I wonder if there'll ever be a swing to the other side. That people start to get over it. And because, granted, I'm an old man, but I'm over the internet, dude.
Yeah.
I'm like over it. I like it. I want it in little pieces, not all the time. Like I've been on it for the last 15 years. I'm kind of over. I wonder if you're going to see that, because
I think you
everything's
are,
zig
because
and
there's
zag. Kids
there's
are on it all the time. It's like maybe they're like, I'm over this. I want to go. Like my daughters, right? My daughter loves YouTube. They love YouTube, but when you give them something to do, they do it. That's the biggest problem, I think, with my daughter's generation. And granted, they're only 5. Is that they don't seek it. They're okay with just sitting down watching YouTube videos all day. Whereas I was a kid, it was like go outside and find adventure.
See, okay, but you have to have kids like that. Okay, so I started snowboarding last season. I did not see an iPad in sight. These kids were so stoked because they were in love with snowboarding and all they wanted to do goes back on the slope. You just have to make these kids fall in love with something.
Yeah.
And that's it. You have to make them fall in love. Like this is what they want to do. And you can punish them. We're like, hey, if you keep playing on the iPad, no more snowboarding. And they'll start crying. But it's what you want.
But I think as well, it also, and this is once again, not to say I'm the greatest parent ever, but I definitely try. Like, I think it's to not use technology as much as a crutch as a parent, right? Like it can become hard, especially when you're running a business and you have a lot of other things going on. But you look at a lot of these iPad kids, it's like a drug, man. You take it away from them and they freak the hell out. So I think at the same time, it is
Yeah,
making a lot.
my daughter does that sometimes too. If there's nothing to do, she freaks the fuck out.
So you have them do things. Like my 6-year-old, she's been skiing since she was 2.5. So she's incredibly good. She's doing double black diamonds at 6 years old.
Nice.
But it's like at the same time, you have to, as a parent, foster that a bit. And I think it does get hard when, and this kind of comes back to the money system, right? Both parents are working. You're barely scraping by with both parents working. So it's like, as parents, we're trying damn hard to make things go right, but it's not easy, man. So we try to do what we can do to help our kids. So it is a cultural issue, but it's an economic issue, really. It all comes back to being an economic issue because you look at the 1950s, both parents didn't have to work. Our money was worth a lot more than it's worth now. And you look at kind of the culture we lived in at the time, it was very different.
Yeah. I mean, it's so crazy. It's just so crazy. And I just don't know what the future is, because again, you could be like, get your kid off the pad. Okay. But what is the future going to be? It's just going to be more computers, more AI, more that stuff, right? So you got to find that compromise between, them. I'm sorry, but it's like I always go back to my father. My father, when I was a kid, was like, get off that video game. You're never going to make money playing video games. Those were literally his words. Now, I was a little ahead of the time before streaming services happened, but like my daughter's crushing PS5 right now. She crushes it. And she's 5 and she's playing games that are a little older for her, but she's so good at it. Like what if she grows up and she's like this dominant female gamer?
Mm-hmm.
Compared to these guys who are like, yeah, my kid's never on the pad. Well, I'm like, they might as well be Amish at this point because they're going up against kids who are just crushing the internet right now. So it's like this real fine line.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't say much because I know my 6-year-old kicks my ass in Mortal Kombat 4. So it's like at the same time, there's not much I can say about it. We live in a technology world, but I guess at some point in time, it's finding the balance. To me, honestly, the biggest thing I didn't consider, right, is so back when I got out of school 20 years ago, I was a high school teacher for a couple of years. The thing I didn't consider now is how hard teachers' jobs are trying to figure out, is this AI, is this real? And the thing to think about there is it's driving our literacy rates down, right? Because people aren't able to think and aren't able to write and articulate. So there are new problems we're going to have in the future that we have to think with. How do we deal with those things now before they happen?
I would say let's go back to handwritten. Are you really going to ask? Are you going to really ask AI to write it for you and then go handwrite it? No, you're not. You might as well just write it. I would go back to old school, handwrite that shit. No more.
I do it every day. I write my jokes in handwritten. Like I'll write, like if I have a premise I gotta write down, or else I'll lose it into my skull. So I have to like write it down, and then I go home and I handwrite it, and I write like a chicken that had a heart attack. That's my writing right now. Chicken scratch heart attack font, and but it is important to be writing. Like they were going to try to get rid of cursive forever, and there was a giant pushback, and so now they're still teaching cursive. And that's another thing I want to say, like. It's very easy to get into doom and gloom, that there's no hope. And I'm not going to say the end of the empire isn't coming. Our leaders have overstretched ourselves. We're beyond our capacity in this desire to police the world so that corporations can rape everybody. But when they pass that, they try to pass a bill which said you couldn't get FEMA funding if you didn't support Israel. That died on the vine. Dude, there was such a backlash to that. They revolted. They just pulled back. So I think people need to really start to understand, like the bickering between us is going to be the biggest downfall if we don't start coming together and understand that it's not like the war isn't this group versus this group, but it's like this economic level versus this economic level. That's really where the war is at. And if it's like,
Well, it's a war for your mind, man. I guess to quote Alex Jones is from what he's been saying for years. But like it's a war for your mind. You look at the problem with the Second World War is the same banks were funding both sides. If you look at in the kind of the social media or war for your mind that we live in now, it's the same people funding things that drive money for them. And I think it's understanding where the division comes from. When you understand where the division comes from, you can actually pull yourself out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's it. It's like, the point I get in a debate with my friends all the time. You know, some 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 of my friends think that this show from a religious point of view could be having do more damage than good. And that was before. Now this time we kind of had a talk, and he was like, "I get what you're doing. Uh, you know, the point of the show isn't to save you, but it's to give you the data for you to save yourself. And the way you save yourself is not falling for these psyops that they do over and over and over again. And it's getting harder and harder for them to pull psyops on us because we're being more and more educated. More, you know, you got Alex Jones, you got Eddie Bravo, you got, Adam Curry, Greg Carlwood. People have been in the game for a very long time. This show came around. People really like this show. And, it's uh, it's fostered a lot of other people who start shows. And so this conspiracy content is everywhere now.
Yeah.
And I love it. And people are consuming it because they no longer can look to the news to tell them what's really going on. They got to look to a YouTube channel. And people are waking up. And I was saying this on Rogan when I was on it. The No Kings thing was a giant flop.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted an immigration riot. And, XG's cousins were all telling their neighborhoods, do not go to this thing. This is a trap. And they want us to riot and burn shit down while Pelletier gets our faces and puts us in the data. And that's why it crashed and burned.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone woke up to it. Once they found out that the Walmart Air was funding the whole fucking thing, they woke up. And I think that's a wonderful sign for us. And I think we're in deep trouble if this gay marriage thing gets overthrown. Because for some reason, for people who play themselves as outsiders, the gay community, they literally can't stop deep throating fucking government psyops. I mean, you tell them there's a disease, they're the first one in line to get the vax. They're showing up at BLM rallies. They're wearing masks. They're doing
What
everything.
is that, do you think? Is that just the party affiliation that they've come to identify as Democrats? Is that, or do you think it's deeper than that?
I don't know, man. It's like, it's very
Because if
weird.
anybody should be skeptical of the fucking government, it's them, right?
Well, if you go to a gay person, hey man, AIDS isn't really what you think it is, and they killed them with AZT. Watch them freak the fuck out.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Fauci.
Freak the fuck out. It's like they're pushing the vax pushed by the guy who was the bad guy in Dallas Buyers Club,
Mm-hmm.
and they just can't even comprehend that. They just can't even understand that, and they carry their version of their like genocide, which I would say, yeah, man. I mean, for that size community, that was a big event in their history. But yet they still trust the pharmaceutical companies that were basically lying to them and getting them to take this bioweapon that killed off so many of them.
Do you think it's because the truth never came out to them as early as it did for COVID for us? As in, they live with AIDS being so deadly and so
I'm sure that's part of it.
Yeah,
but I don't. It's very weird, dude. It's like, are they really flamboyant, cheerleaders of the gay community? Are they mostly rich kids? Because rich kids love to conform. They love it. They love to conform to their dads. And even though they act like they hate their dads, or they really do hate their dads, for some reason they love to conform. They love the big city. That's a big thing too. Most of your gays congregate and live in big cities and gay communities. And once you live in a big city, you're probably working in some sort of corporation, whether it's a small restaurant or a giant corporation. You're in some kind of office structure where groupthink is rewarded.
Mm-hmm.
And if you sit there and go, "Hey, dude, I don't think COVID's real," good luck getting a promotion. Good luck.
Well, the libertarian part of me says that, you know, funny enough that the government doesn't have the power to regulate it either way.
Well, yeah, but they get you to conform through this psyop to that there's this giant disease. Rachel Maddow's shiny lesbian ass, who is now pushing mRNA vaccines, even though there's compilations of her completely and utterly lying about the COVID vax. She's right there back doing it because she's a Rhodes Scholar. Like they can't fire her. They pulled her back for a little while until her brand kind of healed, and then they're pushing her back out. I mean, she was making like $30 million a year to do one show a week. I mean, that's
But
better than
how do they do
basketball
that?
money.
I guess how do they do that with the numbers they have though? That's what doesn't make sense to me. You know, why are they, you know, for the most part, these channels don't have the viewership. There was a stat I had seen a couple years ago that they took the nightly primetime lineup of Fox News, MSNBC, CNBC, and they said all combined they didn't beat one episode of Rogan. So it's like at the same time, how are they able to keep coming back? Like, where's the money coming from?
Again, I think that goes into that USA AID, US aid. You know, that is to me where so much of this money is coming from. I've always said this, like everything you hate in the world was funded by the Federal Reserve. It's all astroturfed, fake, false reality on God's reality. And that's why, and then they figured like, okay, we're not going to make money maybe on the presentation on the television, but we're going to take it, we're going to chop it up, and we're going to YouTube's going to promote it to everybody and put it on the front page of YouTube, and they're going to get a ton of views that way, like 3 million views, 2 million views. And to them, they'll run ads through that whole thing and try to make their money that way, but they need the propaganda. And then you can get into my theory about ley lines and how they're kind of amplifiers, and you've positioned these news organizations on these ley lines. They kind of promotes this into the ether, dude, into the universe. Because you're totally right. You're like, if nobody's watching this, why are these talking points everywhere?
Correct. Correct. Other than control, right? And they wouldn't be able to do it if it didn't work. They've been able to push out control for a really long time. And that kind of goes back to what you're saying earlier about Project Mockingbird, right? But I do think that simulation's breaking.
You know, and to kind of get back to the original discussion of like gods and people making themselves gods. Like we just had a woman on, Heidi Love, talking about the Kabbalah and its influence on Mormonism, and then you start getting into like, are these people funded by bankers and corporations, and what's the role of intelligence? Like Scientology to me is just a giant naval intelligence operation.
I'm a Scientologist, Sam.
Are you really?
And it is not a naval intelligence operation.
Well, I
I'll tell
mean,
you that.
okay, but okay, let's get into it then. L. Ron Hubbard was straight up a naval intelligence agent, 100%.
No, that's not true.
That is totally true. It's 100% true. He was naval intelligence, and he was sent. Listen, I don't want to offend you and your beliefs. Okay, you can believe whatever you're allowed to believe whatever you want, but he was 100% a naval intelligence agent, and he was sent in to the Jack Parsons and the dark occult of Jack Parsons and that whole stuff going with the rocket scientists in California. He was connected to what's his face? What's the guy we always talk about, Johnny? What is his fuck, I can't believe it. We always talk about him. The old guy that's Barbara Bush's father. Who do we say it is? I can't believe it. Nobody on this fucking I have fucking retards on this fucking show.
You're the one who can't remember.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about him all the time. What is his name? The old occult fucking witch at the top that everyone in music worship.
Crowley?
Crowley, yes, and his
Okay.
connections to Crowley. Crowley warning Jack Parsons about L. Ron Hubbard. I'm not here to offend you, and
I can't say I have any knowledge about that, so I'm not really gonna
okay,
dive into that.
I respect that. I respect that. I didn't know you were a Scientologist. That's fine. I have my beliefs. But we see that throughout so much of these movements, uh, government connections.
I think Hubbard, he even said himself he was part of intelligence. I think he's quoted
That's
as
Again,
saying.
that's
not
not.
something I'm aware of, so I'm not going to comment.
That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll-
there are quotes about him saying his work is classified. And
Okay,
they talk
we
about it,
don't
but
need a okay. I mean,
anyway.
it is what it is. I mean, you got people saying that Jesus is a Jewish agent. So I mean, like everybody, we did something on Conspiracy Social Club about, Mohammed and like the shady past of him. So I mean, you can go into any of these things on anybody,
Well,
so that
you can find anything on the internet about anybody, man. It's kind of how it goes.
um but I do believe that but would you say that there seems to be some kind of thing with maybe not you and your beliefs, but there are some stuff with Scientology and Hollywood, and a lot of guys are supposedly closeted. Would you say there's a little bit of pattern of that?
No, once again I wouldn't say that. I don't even know where that claim would come from.
John Travolta, Tom Cruise, a bunch of the big name people, and when people try to leave.
Once again, man, that's not something I really wanted to talk about today.
Okay, I respect that. It's all good. What else do we got? We got anything else? I mean, like we can get into? Did we cover it all?
Yeah, I think we kind of hit everything that I had.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, I mean, what we're looking at right now is we're in the middle of a controlled demolition of this country. So the question is, how do you save yourself? How do you position yourself so even if everything just goes completely crazy, how can you position yourself? I think you're seeing giant movements right now. I think you're seeing people leaving big cities to go to small cities, maybe position themselves outside the big city. So if they want big city kind of like energy, like I want to move to Austin, but I don't want to live in Austin. I want to live outside of Austin in a tiny town, and I could drive in, get that kind of big city juice, and then go. That's a great way. Get land, get guns, get gold, silver, precious metals, and that's why I keep telling everybody. Like the key is like when you get into precious metals, your money is kind of stable at that point,
Sure.
and
Well,
it only goes up.
Well, I think it's that, and I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier. It's not over individuating. It's getting back to having groups. It's getting back to being literate. A lot of these things are what destroys a society. So having those things existing, despite what is happening to us, is one of the biggest ways we survive.
Yeah, I think that is the future. I mean, family's the future. Again, everything culture tells you is not your friend. I've learned that through recovery. Like everything I ever learned in recovery is the exact opposite that our culture is telling us. You know, quick self-indulgence, instant gratification, blaming everybody for your problems. All those things to me are giant red flags. And you're being programmed into the material. And when the key is to get away from the material, and obviously you have religion, a lot of us have religion. I see people going back to the church. I think that's a great sign that people are getting more spiritual than they ever did. I think no matter what you can say about the progressives, they can bitch and moan about everything and yell about fascism as they completely omit any of the data which says that Biden sent FBI agents to Board of Education meetings to scare parents from questioning what's going on at these schools, to and this is both sides making people get the vax, the White House telling these social media people to censor people talking shit. You know, whatever you want to say, progressives, you had your shot. You had your shot. You got to implement everything you wanted, and nobody liked it.
Well, and they also don't procreate though, too. You know, it's if you look at they're not having kids, and that's why their biggest thing has been trying to get more conservative minded people's kids because they're not having children.
And
So
that's why they want to get so early into the education. And if I could fight Albert Kinsey, I would do. I would fucking go back in time and go, Tripoli, you got a time machine. What are you doing? I'm fighting 3 fucking people. I'm going there with a bat and I'm gonna fuck them up. And he's one of them. It's Woodrow Wilson, Mayor Rothschild, and Albert Kinsey. And I would fuck that. I would smash their skulls, get back in, and then go back in time and see how I say if I saved humanity. Hopefully it doesn't go worse. But all of them were awful people. And you think this sex education shit? You think before they had sex education, kids didn't know what they were doing? Like when teachers are bringing butt plugs to school, like what kind of fucking world do you live in that you're not a fucking predator bringing butt plugs to a school to
So
educate
crazy.
children on butt plugs? Like,
seriously.
they're everywhere now. Like, dude, butt plugs are everywhere now. It's like crazy to me. It's like,
Yeah.
what do we
So are
do?
dildos. They're on basketball courts as well.
Yeah, and these chicks are getting mad. They're getting dildos thrown at them. Like, hey, dude, you love dildos.
The betting market on that was wild, by the way.
Yeah, dude.
Could you imagine the risk somebody's taking that they're betting on it and trying to win, but they're also the one like throwing the dildo on the court to make sure it happens?
Dude,
Yeah,
this is $30,000. It's worth it,
Yeah.
dude. And you just throw it, and then all of a sudden you see your money get fucking deposited.
the security got real tight on that, but like it's real easy to hide it. Just hide it in between your pants. It's just that easy. It's not. You don't need that much.
All right, Jeremy, this has been an excellent episode. Every time you come on, it's a fucking banger, buddy. One more time, tell them where they can find you.
Yeah, so my company's Command Your Brand, and obviously I don't want to see people's companies decline and fall like Rome, so I put together a great resource called Command Your Empire. Head over to commandyourempire.com. You can grab that now.
All right, buddy, this has been great. Great episode. Let's break it down, dude. Okay, guys, what'd you think? Xavier, Billboard boy, what do you think?
I'm scared. How much longer do we have in this empire, in this country? We got what, 5 more presidents?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Now you're gonna have to sneak back over the. So what's really interesting, guys? Not to get too far off topic, but so you remember when we had Shepard on? He's like, "Dude, it's free. Mexico, it's free." That they just passed a law that everybody must be biometrically tracked.
Yep, I wouldn't doubt it.
I mean, that's the whole thing. You think you move here, you think you move there, it's all good. No, dude, it's gonna be everywhere. The key is just getting to a small enough town where they don't focus on you.
Look what this is what's going on in DC is a trial run.
100%.
Yeah.
But again, what the left is going to tell you is this is a Donald Trump like plan. It's like, no, dude, this was all started in BLM. Defund the police, pressure from above, pressure from below. It's like it's 2 wings of the same bird, dude. It's the same bird, dude. This is all. It's very interesting because what it used to be, dude, is they would get a bunch of Republicans in. Republicans would do war, spend money, all this stuff. And then they would give them a Democrat to be like, listen, man, we got to calm down, love everybody. I think it's flipped now. I think that is Trump's role because everyone loves him so much. Be like, dude, you love me. Trust me. You love me. Trust me. Right? And everyone's like, we trust you.
Yeah. Oh, honestly, it started kind of flipping. I mean, did you see on Ron Paul's 90th birthday that clip that was going around of him in the debate in 2008 where he had the gall to criticize the Iraq war and everybody on stage was like, I can't believe what are you saying our boys aren't fighting for American freedoms over there? And Ron Paul, all he was saying was like, hey, maybe we should investigate the motivations of the people who did this because it might have something to do with our foreign policy. And that was just the biggest insult. Like Rudy Giuliani was like, I'm going to demand you withdraw that remark, sir.
Yeah, they're just such pieces of shit.
But that's totally flipped. The Republican Party's done a 180 on that. And it's down to Trump partly, I would say.
Scott Horton just had a great clip. He had that guy that everyone's pissed at because of the Hitler shit. I don't know if they're doing a podcast together right now.
I don't know. Are you talking about the
guy who's like, Winston Churchill was as bad as Hitler? that
the
guy,
historian guy, right?
Darren
Yeah.
something or
Yeah.
Derek, I forget what his name is, but
Cooper, right?
Cooper, right?
Yeah.
And they're because I think Cooper was in the military,
Oh,
and he was talking about like kind of like how he feels and how the military vets feel, and Cooper was saying that basically most of the vets are like, I don't know why we were there, I don't know what the purpose of, and he was bringing up that there were people within the military that just thought, hey, we got this military, we need to run some military exercises, and what a better place to do it than Afghanistan, right? Like,
yeah,
hey, dude, the
yeah.
Taliban's down the fight. Let's go fucking get these guys some experience, which is kind of like the old kind of like mixed martial arts dojo thing. It's like, dude, you've been doing this long enough. You gotta go fight some people. Go, just see if this shit works or not. Like how
Crazy.
crazy, like in a weird way, it's the Comedy Store. Like if you've been at the Comedy Store week in, week out for decades, you've failed. You're not, that's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go there, master the art, and then go try your kung fu out, which was very interesting because when I started headlining, dude, because there was a time, and it kind of still is now, that if you were an LA comic, everyone wanted to test you. So I remember when I was playing the Dallas Improv, the Addison Improv, and the GM picked me up at the airport because this is way before Uber. And he's like, "Yeah, man, we got our best feature for you. We want to see how you do." And I remember thinking to myself, "Why are you like testing me? Like, what is the purpose of that?" And I realized because everyone was jealous of LA and they always thought their comics were better than Los Angeles comics because that's what they would do. Like New York City was always great at that. New York City would be like, dude, David Tell would crush Joey Bananas. They would always take it the worst one and put it up against their best one. And you're like, yeah, because everyone crushes Joey Bananas. You're like comparing literally apples and oranges right there. But that's how it used to be. So you would leave the Comedy Store and go test your kung fu. And that's what they were talking about in the military. And it's like kind of fucking nuts that that's their
That's
mentality.
wild. That's like that Hicks bit about them just pulling out the magazine, with the different missiles and like, how about A-13, launching Scud missile? Yeah, dude, it was. I don't. I mean, yeah, I don't know what I don't see things getting any better with that either because what the next administrations don't, as far as you can tell by the available options, it's going to be right back to business as usual, right? Like,
Yeah.
think about who it could be, like Vance, Newsom, I guess. I don't any of the other gaggle of retards. None of them are going to be. It's going to be back to normal, right? Like back to just insanity. Although, I mean, things are crazy right now too. Don't you think,
Yeah.
Sam?
I
Like,
mean,
who don't you think it's just going to be right back to the way it was with Biden and every other dipshit before that?
it just seems like it's just, little things change, right? Little details change, but they all do the same shit.
Yeah.
And
I
it's
mean, at
just
least
like,
now things are fucked, but in a different way. You know what I mean? But we're just
well,
going to be right back to.
well, there seems to be this understanding is that the internet, you can't make people watch something they don't want to watch. There's so many options. You can't make them watch something. Back when there was only television. And so what's going on right now, dude? The left completely has captured television. The left controls television and the right controls the internet. And the left is losing their mind because the right has the narrative, has the message, has the eyeballs. And the shit with Anthony Jeselnik and Mark Maron kind of going after these podcasts when it's so obvious that the left was way more political than the right. Like they were having political talking points in kids' television shows, like pushing narratives in these shows. So they're upset. They don't play fair. They don't want to play fair. They just want to dominate, and they have no real way of doing it anymore. You cannot control it because the minute you censor somebody, everyone on the internet loses their fucking mind and comes after you, and you have to install them or else your brand dies. And that, it's like when Jeremy was talking about YouTube seems to be letting go. That's because what the people want. They started seeing Rumble and Twitter started to get traction, and they're like, if we don't allow that in, we're going to lose all these people to these platforms.
God,
Yeah.
I hope that lasts.
We may
The
not be able
answer-
to control what Washington, D.C. does, but we can control what happens in our neighborhoods.
And
If
what you
Trump-
spend your money on. Go to
Yeah.
Rumble. Don't go back to YouTube because they're straightening out. If you can get what you want on Rumble or these other websites, go there. Fuck
I
'em.
just don't understand why it's so hard to get people off YouTube. I just don't understand it. Hey, if you go to samtripoli.com, I'm not bringing that up right now, but if you go to well, yeah, let's do it, dude.
Yeah, do it.
samtripoli.com, check it
Make
out.
sure you can. Hold on.
All the dates are there. I've added new dates, more dates. We're making it happen. Things are great. I'm in Huntington Beach on Sunday. I'm in Kansas City at the end of the month. Big week for me there. Chicago, Ventura. Grab your tickets to that. Tulsa, and then Oklahoma City. And then the big weekend, a lot of people are coming out for it. We're going to make a big event. Sam Tripoli at the Mothership. Go check that out. And then Skankfest.
Nice.
And I got new dates coming out for the new year, but I'm not going to put them out yet. All the wonderful shows I'm doing. You're getting one, sometimes two episodes a week on samtripoli.com.